9:30 and quorum. Shall we get started? Are you ready for us, Tanya?
We are ready when you are.
Perfect. Good morning. My name is Julia Rady. I am the chair of the Toronto Preservation Board. We have quorum, so I'm now calling meeting 19 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Preservation Board would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered at today's meeting to speak, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting Toronto Preservation Board at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council. As a reminder, please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at hertpb@toronto.ca to help with motions. At this time, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of your interest. I'm going to go first. I have an interest today on PB 19.2, 40 Wabash Avenue, inclusion on the Heritage Register, as my firm, Stevens Burgess Architects Limited, was as engaged as the Heritage Consultants by Diamond Schmidt for work at the property, and I am one of the authors of the Heritage Impact Assessment for the anticipated redevelopment. When we reach this item on the agenda, I will pass the chair role over to Paul, the vice chair, and will not participate in discussions and voting on the item and turn off my camera. Are there any other declarations of interest? Hello, Peter.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I would like to declare a conflict on PB 19.4, 263 Adelaide Street West. I was formerly involved as a consultant on this property some time ago, so I'd like to declare an interest on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other declarations of interest? Seeing none, we will proceed. May I please have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on May 7th, 2024? Jack, all those in favor, please. The motion is carried. Before we review the agenda, I'd like to take a moment to welcome our newest member to the Toronto Preservation Board as part of our agenda item. So welcome, Peter Pantalone. It's nice to have you join us. So I'm going to draw your attention as well to two new agenda items, which we will need to vote on to introduce before we take action. PB 19.8, the Preservation Panel Minutes. May I please have a motion to introduce this item? From Paul, all those in favor, please. Motion carries. And then the next item is PB 19.9, 239, 241 to 243, and 247 to 255 Dundas Street East, alterations to heritage properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I'm going to move a motion to add this item to today's agenda, and I think I had a letter to introduce this one too. Tanya, do we need to see the letter, or are we just introducing this one? What would you like us to do?
I don't think we need to see the letter. We can just introduce it.
Perfect. So I'm moving a motion to introduce this item to the agenda. All those in favor, please. Motion carries. So now let's proceed with the agenda review. The first item is PB 19.1, 522 University Avenue, notice of intention to designate a property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. There is a presentation from City Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear it. Would anybody like to hold this item? Seeing none, would anybody like to move the recommendations in the report? I'll move the recommendations in the report. All those in favor? Motion carries. And now I'm going to turn it over to Paul ever so quickly.
Okay, item PB 19.2, 40 Wabash Avenue, inclusion on the Heritage Register, Ward 4. We have no speakers on this item. We have a report before us. Does anyone wish to hold the item? Adam, you'd like to hold it? Okay. We will hold it. And I'll turn it back to Julia.
All right, moving on to item PB 19.3, 778 King Street West, alterations and demolition to heritage attributes at a designated heritage property under Section 33 and 34(1)(1) of the Ontario Heritage Act. There are public speakers registered on this item, so I will hold it. The next is PB 19.4, 263 Adelaide Street West, alterations to and demolition of heritage attributes of a designated heritage property under Part 4, Section 33 and 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to amend a heritage easement agreement. There are public speakers registered on this item, so I'm going to hold it. The next is PB 19.5, 309 Cherry Street, alterations to heritage attributes on a designated heritage property under Part 4, Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There are public speakers registered on this item, so I will hold it. Then we have PB 19.6, the 2024 Toronto Heritage Grants Award. We have a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear it. Would anybody like to hold this item? Jeff would like to hold it. Moving on, the next is we have PB 19.7, public appointment to the Toronto Preservation Board. This is a letter from the city clerk indicating the appointment of Peter Pantalone to the Toronto Preservation Board following the departure of Robert Alsop. There are no recommendations in this letter. Can I have a motion to receive the item for information? From Paul, all those in favor, please. Adam? I see you're voting yes to receive the information or no?
Or you're frozen.
Am I frozen, my friends?
I think it was on my end.
Okay, so all those in favor, let's try this again. Adam?
For which item?
For PB 19.7, the public appointment to the Toronto Preservation Board to receive. Perfect, thank you so much. Ooh, holding everything in suspense, the agenda review, my goodness. The next item is one of our new business items, PB 19.8, the Preservation Panel Minutes. May I have a motion to receive the Etobicoke York Preservation Panel Minutes for information? From Paul, all those in favor, please. And the motion carries. The next we have PB 19.9, 239, 241 to 243, and 247 to 255 Dundas Street East, alterations to heritage properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. We have a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available. I'm going to hold this item. At this time, we do have one of our items, PB 19.3, which has a confidential attachment to it. And we have speakers on it. I'm going to move this agenda item to the end in case there's discussion and we have to close the meeting. It's just easier that way. Other than that, I will. We've finished our agenda review, and we will return to item 19.2, and I'll turn it over to Paul.
Okay, item PB 19.2, 40 Wabash Avenue, inclusion on the Heritage Register, Ward 4. We have a presentation from staff. Who is presenting this morning?
Paul, that'll be me. Gary Miedema, I'm a project manager with Heritage Planning, and I'll be presenting this. So I'll let Emma pull up the presentation.
Terrific.
Hi, everyone. I'm just waiting for share permissions. So if clerks could, thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Okay. This report recommends that, well, first of all, I'd like to recognize Lindsay Parsons and Patrick Brown for their work on this report with me. This report recommends that City Council include 40 Wabash Avenue, including entrance address at 50 Wabash Avenue on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register for its cultural heritage value and interest. Next slide, please. The property is located in the Roncesvalles neighborhood on the north side of Wabash Avenue and on the eastern border of Sororan Park. The property at 40 Wabash Avenue contains the former Canada Linseed Oil Mills Limited Factory Warehouse that was constructed between 1910 and 1947. And you're looking at a view from the east of that building on the right. Next slide, please. Staff have undertaken research and evaluation for the property at 40 Wabash Avenue and believe that the property has cultural heritage value or interest and meets at least one of the criteria prescribed in Ontario Regulation 906 for including a non-designated property on a municipal register under Section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Constructed in phases between 1910 and 1947, the property at 40 Wabash Avenue has value as a representative example of an early 20th century factory warehouse type complex with Edwardian classical detailing. The property also has value for its association with the Canada Linseed Oil Mills Limited, with the development of the surrounding neighborhood in the early 20th century, and for its association with Toronto architect Charles Edward Langley, who designed the 1910 section of the property. The property has value finally for supporting and maintaining the former industrial character of the area to the north and south of Sororan Park and is visually and historically linked to its surroundings. And that's the end of the presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Does anyone have questions of staff? Adam?
I'll try to go through these one at a time. I have 2 or 3 questions. Gary, thank you for that great presentation, and it's great to see Heritage Planning staff taking initiative to protect this building. What was not mentioned is that this building is undergoing renovation in the future to become a new community center for the City of Toronto. This is a wonderful project on the city's website. I'm wondering if any of the industrial elements, which may not be part of the brick and mortar building itself, were captured within the inclusion or will be captured in the future if it goes for designation. There are elements within the former factory that pertain to its industrial heritage. I'm wondering if those could be protected moving forward.
That could certainly be considered through the designation, and that would be the appropriate time to do it.
My second question is pertaining to, apparently the chimney is quite structurally unstable at this point. Do we have anyone from Toronto Buildings or from the project team here that could speak to attempts to stabilize that building in the interim?
We don't. And again, I think that would be considered through. So Heritage Planning's in working obviously very closely with Parks on this file.
Yep.
And that could also be addressed as we move forward through designation. I do see a hand.
Sorry, I can speak to this. I'm sorry, my name is Ashley Wilson. I'm the project manager for with Parks, Forestry, and Recreation for the new Wabash Community Recreation Center project. We are aware of the chimney issue, and we are undertaking to preserve the chimney. So there's a stabilization strategy that we have a consultant team on board to address the chimney, and we will make our very best efforts to preserve the chimney. But it does require some technical, there's some technical challenges which we will seek to overcome.
Yep. My concern is if this is just listed and that chimney collapses on its own accord, then there may not be the provisions in place to ensure it's reconstructed or rebuilt or stabilized. And then my last question actually pertains to the name Wabash, and this is more of a comment. I strongly encourage city staff to look at the meaning behind the word Wabash. It is an indigenous name from the Miami language, referring to the effect of light on top of water in the sun, or the effect of metal being heated to a white hot temperature. something I would encourage looking into within the design elements. I've emailed that several times over the past 5 years, but something worth considering with the Indigenous heritage of this site. Yep. Ashley?
I can also address that. We have, as part of our Indigenous engagement through the Community Center project, we did engage quite extensively with the urban Indigenous communities as well as the Mississaugas. And we do have we did receive from an historian, a Mississauga historian named Darren Wabenga, a quite thorough research of the history of the name Wabash and its association with the property. We do have a copy.
Is it possible to share that with the Preservation Board? I'm sure a few members here might find that interesting. Thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Anyone else have questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, do we have any discussion amongst ourselves? No? Okay. We have a staff report before us. Would anyone like to move the staff report? Adam? Okay. And this will be a recorded vote. If you would just hold your hands up long enough for me to read off your names, then we'll get the clerks to record it. Alex? Sorry, you're voting? All right, all in favor. So in favor, I see myself, Adam.
Ashley, we need you to turn the camera off for the recorded vote. Thank you.
Okay, Adam, Alex, Jeff, Karash, Matthew, Mitchell, Peter, and Wendy. So that carries, all in favor. Thank you. And we can turn it back over to Julia.
Hello again. Our next item, remember we're keeping 19.3 until the end, is we're moving on to 19.4, 263 Adelaide Street West, alterations to and demolition of heritage attributes of a designated property under Part 4, Section 33 and 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to amend a heritage easement agreement. We have a staff report on this item. Would anybody like to hear this? Adam, so let's take it away.
Good morning. My name is Anne Fisher. I'm the Acting Senior Manager at Heritage Planning. I'm here to outline the proposals for the heritage property at 263 Adelaide Street West. The proposal is seeking approval under Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act to alter the property, and under Section 34 to remove some of its heritage attributes. Staff are recommending that this application is approved and that the existing heritage easement agreement on the property is amended to reflect this proposal. Next slide, please. So here is the location plan of the property. It is located on the south side of Adelaide Street West between John Street and Duncan Street, and it's shown in red, in the red outline on this slide. Next slide, please. This is a photograph of the building at 263 Adelaide Street West. It's known as the Perman building. It is a commercial warehouse type building that was built in 1915 by designed by architects A.R. Dennison and Stevenson. It is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and it is within the now in force Kings Spadina Heritage Conservation District. Next slide, please. So this slide has a rendering and elevation of the scheme that was approved for this site in 2017. This is for a 49-storey mixed-use building. The front facade was to be retained and restored and integrated into the new building. Next slide, please. Changes to the conservation strategy, however, are now being proposed. The original strategy was to retain the whole front facade, but as a consequence of the Ontario line construction, the streetcar had to be rerouted along this part of Adelaide Street West. As a consequence of this, the facade retention strategy had to be changed. Because of the high voltage cables that run along to serve the streetcar, the retention frame that was originally proposed for this building had to be amended. It had to be narrowed, so that for safety reasons, to have an appropriate separation distance between the high voltage electric cables and the retention frame. As a consequence of narrowing the tension frame, it couldn't support the whole of the front facade. So as a consequence, the top 2 floors are now proposed to be panelized and removed. Next slide, please. This shows the conservation plan that is being proposed. The retention frame, hold on, my notes are mixed up. So the conservation plan is largely the same as originally proposed. The only difference is that the top 2 floors are now being panelized and removed, and then they would be brought back to the site once the construction is underway, and they'll be integrated into new development. The only other changes are there are 2 louvers on some basement windows that are now being proposed, and the lintels on the 2nd to 5th floor had to be altered because they are damaged. Other than that, the conservation strategy or the result of the scheme will look the same as originally approved. The staff are recommending that this is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have speakers registered on this item. The first I have on the list is Christopher Weed. Is he here?
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome. You have 5 minutes, and as you get close to the end, I will indicate that you're close to the end.
I only need about 12 seconds. So I'm Christopher Wine. I'm one of the owners of the property, and I worked closely with Ann Fisher and staff on this revised plan, and Ann just simply suggested that I make myself available in case there's questions, but as you can see, we have the entire team of engineers and ERA and so on also registered on the call, so I'm just going to simply wait to see if there's a question that they can't answer. Otherwise, I have nothing more to say.
Thank you very much. Apologies for mispronouncing your last name. We have, are there any questions of this particular speaker? We have a number registered from Lantera Developments. Danya, Siavash, Arash, Craig, and Jordan. Do any of you have a presentation for us, or are you all available just for questions?
We're all here just to answer if anyone has any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So let's do we have any questions of any of the speakers? Jeff.
I just wondered if you can explain more the technical aspect about panelization. What is the difference between having the frame and panelization, and what is the ultimate difference in terms of the quality of the retention proposal?
Perhaps I could jump in there. So yes, the 2 upper levels, to clarify in terms of panelization. So essentially we'll have the spandrel panels above and below the windows dismantled as full sections, and those panels will incorporate some of the existing steel structure that's embedded within the brick masonry, and will also be clamped together with like carbon fiber in the backside and steel framing to stabilize those units so they can be removed as full sections and then later reinstated and reconstructed. And that'll be the same approach for the piers between the windows, which actually have steel columns embedded into there, and we'll utilize some of that steel to help stabilize those sections, remove them as units, large units, and then reinstate them. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions of our speaker? Adam.
Given the proximity of the high voltage lines, is there enough of a radius to work around panelization on this site? if you were dealing with already a narrow distance for the framing, if you require a crane to lift these panels out of place, is there enough room to work with the high voltage lines?
So on that, Chris, did you want to jump a little bit further? Like from what I know, we're the sorry, I'm Craig Wadsworth, RGC. We're structural engineers for the project, and from my understanding, there's a construction management plan to do the lifting and hoisting and means that accommodate that. But I don't have the particulars on offhand.
This is Christopher. Yes, there is enough room to maneuver the panels, both to do the panelization initially and then to replace the panels ultimately in the fullness of time. So we have worked very closely with TTC with our construction management plan to ensure that we're able to do this through the use of both mobile cranes in the beginning, and then when we go to replace the panels at the end, we'll be using the crane from within the site. So we have worked out all these details over the past year with TTC and the city.
Do we have anyone from TTC here that could speak to the impacts on TTC ridership? I know that's going away from heritage planning, but it does seem like it will have quite the impact for an already overburdened system.
There is, I don't believe anyone from TTC is attending the meeting, but we've been working closely with them. We don't anticipate causing any significant issues with the TTC. With respect, there is enough room between the retention system and the TTC tracks to manage our construction staging for this particular exercise without affecting the streetcar's ability to move back and forth through the lane.
Okay, thank you. I find it interesting that the frame was too bulky, but using a crane and disassembling and swinging parts of the building out over the system is not.
Adam,
Thank
you
you.
can save it for our commentary
Yep.
at the end, okay? Do we have other questions of our speakers? Wendy.
Sorry, from my understanding, so this the preservation is more on the keeping the facade, right, or the exterior of the building, and it's going to have 49 storage mixed-use building. So my first question is, because from the staff presentations, page 4, so you see that it's like the artist's impressions of some part of the new design of, I mean, the design of the new building. And I just wonder how that like overall style with the new building and going to complement with the existing heritage building. So because I'm not able to see much here, and I don't know how much, whether that's rules for the step back regulations and how that is going to keep the building like prominence as what is with the original spirit of the design. And then my second question is about the, I read the report and it's mentioned that will be a signage plan. Is that anything that's can disclose about what where the signage is going to place? Okay, thank you.
Wendy, do you want to ask both of the speakers, or especially your first question, is that more a question for staff?
Oh, I don't know. Is that for staff or for the speaker? So the speaker not to answer these questions?
No, you can ask the question to both of them. I just wanted to make sure that we get the right person to answer the question for you, and so I didn't know where you were directing it.
Okay, so because the speaker and the staff, they both involved with this negotiation, right? So that could be for both. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I will turn it over to our speaker team.
I can probably answer that as staff. The design of this scheme has already been approved. So the question you asked, Wendy, that's all been approved. The only difference here is they're now having a slightly different conservation strategy for the lower parts of the building because of the TTT's tracks going along the line. So that has already been approved. With regard to the signage plan, we usually have conditions on development applications recommending a signage plan. The idea of this is that we can work out with the heritage consultants at an early stage where is the appropriate place to put signage on the building when a commercial tenant comes in, so that when a commercial tenant comes in the future, they have an idea of how to integrate signage onto the property in a respectful manner.
I see.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. So, but I just think just for the information, maybe it's being approved before I joined, so I don't have the information. But anyway, thank you for the information.
So just before we move on, are there questions of our speakers? Seeing none, thank you all for attending today. Do we have questions of staff? Adam. Adam, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sure can.
Wonderful, thank you. This is a broader question in terms of the impact of the Ontario line construction. Do we anticipate other files in a similar carriage that have to come forward for revisions due to the impacts of that line? And if so, do you have a rough idea of how many?
Through you, Madam Chair, there could be other files. I don't know. We have to treat every file on its own merits. So I don't know the answer to your question. If a file comes forward, we will review it and we'll bring it forward to the Preservation Board as needed.
Thank you.
Other questions of staff? Seeing none, is there discussion amongst ourselves? Adam?
Does anyone else find it interesting that a frame to secure a building in situ is more cumbersome for the Ontario line and the TTC than having a crane swinging large parts of the building out over the street?
I don't know. Paul?
I'll just volunteer an uninformed opinion, which is simply that I would presume the frame would be more massive at the bottom and might be closer to the lines than and maybe the crane can be maneuvered, so that isn't a problem.
Okay.
It doesn't concern me anyways.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
Go for it, Wendy.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'll just follow up with the technical questions. So when the time that's, well, how long is going to impact of the traffic there? So is it going to block the traffic during the construction period? And how long is it going to take? You know, the traffic in that actually in that area is really bad already.
Yes.
No, it's absolutely true. I think though the matter before us is the alteration to the heritage attributes and hoping that the staff that deal with traffic in the city manage it as well as they can, especially in this city of ours.
Well, in this case, the alterations to the heritage property do have a direct impact on traffic flow on that street. They're going to have to close a lane of traffic to have a boom swing for the crane.
It's true. Is there other discussion? Seeing none, does anybody want to move the staff recommendations in this report? I'll move the staff recommendations, and we are taking a recorded vote on this one. So everybody, if you raise your hand, and then I'll say your name. And Tanya, are you ready for us?
I am ready.
Perfect. So Julia, Wendy, Adam, Paul, Karash, Mitchell, Matthew, Jeff, and Alex, all in favor. And the motion carries. And Peter can come back. Marvelous. Our next item is PB 19.5309 Cherry Street, alterations to heritage attributes on a designated heritage property under Part 4, Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Pausing for the fire truck that's going by my window. And now we have a presentation from staff. Would anybody care to hear it? Wendy. All right, I will turn it over to you, Georgia.
Good morning. My name is Georgia Cush. I'll be presenting the report recommending approval of alterations to 309 Cherry Street under Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Next slide, please. Now, the property is located in the Portlands area and specifically on Villiers Island. It's a corner property bounded by Villiers, Commissioners, and Cherry Streets. There have been a substantial number of planning studies completed and ongoing in this area and Villiers Island. And the island itself is subject to the Villiers Island Precinct Plan, which was approved in 2017 and currently being revisited to consider the appropriate amount of new building heights. Now, this heritage permit application has been considered in conjunction with two zoning bylaw amendment applications that have been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, as well as a draft plan of subdivision application. And it's been reviewed alongside the revised precinct plan and recent amendments to the OPM for this area. Next slide, please. There are two buildings on the site. The first is the former Bank of Montreal at the corner, which was designed by architects Darling and Pearson and built in 1920. Next. And the second building is the former Canadian Oil Company's warehouse, which was designed in the Art Moderne style. Next, please. Here is a block plan showing the plan for the property, including the introduction of a new east-west street, which is all consistent with the precinct plan and the Portlands planning framework. And this separates the site into two blocks. The subject heritage buildings are shown in the red circles, and the adjacent heritage properties are in the green circles. Next, please. Here's an axonometric view that shows 3 new towers and several mid-rise buildings proposed for the site. The new massing is set behind the heritage buildings. You can see that in the foreground, conserving the entirety of the buildings with sensitive connections to the new development at the rear and between the two buildings, as well as a new 2-story base building along Villiers and open space along Centre Street behind the Canadian Oil Company's building, which allows for a more 3-dimensional experience. Also, the base buildings of the new development proposed for the southern end of the site respect the height and scale of the adjacent heritage buildings to the south, and again, there is open space behind those adjacent buildings. Next, please. Here are some views up and down Cherry Street showing the proposal in pink and how it maintains the low-scale historic character of that street, which is an important consideration in the official plan modification. Next slide. And finally, this slide shows the minimal interventions that are proposed in blue, which are mostly the enlargement of some existing openings where those walls connect to the new development, and they're not visible from the public realm. Now, staff acknowledged that the proposal only shows detailed impacts to the heritage buildings and the blank massing models for the new buildings on the site, but rest assured that staff will work with the applicant during subsequent stages of the application process to ensure that the materiality and the articulation of the new construction, especially at the base building level and for the mid-rise buildings, supports the industrial heritage character of the area. Overall, staff support the application to alter the property at 309 Cherry Street as the resources are conserved in situ and in full with limited interventions while still allowing a substantial amount of new density as anticipated to this property and to Villiers Island in general. Thanks.
Thank you, Georgia. We have a speaker registered on this item, Emily Collins from ERA. Hi, Emily.
Everyone, good morning.
5 minutes, and I'll cut you off.
I won't need it. I'll be quite brief. My name is Emily Collins. I'm a senior project manager at ERA. First, I just want to thank Georgia for the presentation. I think it really covered everything off. I just wanted to quickly share ERA's excitement for this project. We've been involved in the file for over a decade, so I'm happy we finally get to share it with you guys. We've really carefully considered the conservation strategy for the site with the goal to bring new life to these buildings in a way that really just celebrates the Portlands and its history and the unique opportunities and qualities of this area. And I think this has been achieved in a very thoughtful way. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions of Emily? Jeff?
Just sort of an obvious one. Who is the owner of the lands here? Public or private? I'm just wondering.
Private, and it's Castle Point Numa.
Do they own the Bank of Montreal building and all of it, or just part of it?
That's correct.
Okay.
All of the lands, yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Emily? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time today, Emily. And do we have questions of staff? Adam?
This is a broader Portland related question, but just given the location of this site, I would like to follow up. About a year ago, just less than a year, maybe 6 to 7 months, I had raised concern around the potential for a broader Portland's heritage survey for buildings that may have been missed. Is there any update on that file?
There was a full inventory taken of all the properties within the Portlands area a number of years ago. So that's been done.
That was acknowledged in the earlier meeting with the consideration it might be worth doing a second run through just in case anything was missed, and given how some guidelines have changed, but thank you.
Are there other questions of staff? Seeing none, do we have any discussion amongst ourselves? Thank you, Georgia.
Not through you. Not a question, just a comment that it's really promising to see some full building retentions. It's not every day you get to see those in the city. So yeah, really nice to see it. And glad to see that they're kind of getting a new use and not being just turned into facades. So yeah, a really exciting project, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it's worthy of comment given sometimes all that we deal with. So are there other points of comments or discussion amongst ourselves? Seeing none, I have a staff report with recommendations before us. Would anybody like to move the recommendations in the report? Jeff, all those in favor, please. Motion carries. Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is PB 19.6, the 2024 Heritage Grants Award. We have a presentation from Heritage planning staff, and so I will turn it over to them because I imagine that's why it's held. This is a good news item.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Will Thomas, and I'm an assistant planner with Heritage Planning. This report recommends the approval of 10 grants under the Toronto Heritage Grant Program. Next slide, please. Here's a location map showing the 10 properties that have been recommended for a grant award. The properties that have been recommended for a grant award vary in size and location across Toronto. Several grant projects are at residential properties located in heritage conservation districts, including properties located within the Cabbagetown North, Garden District, and Harvard Village Phase 2 HCDs. In addition, there are a few notable Part 4 designated properties benefiting from heritage grants this year, including Evergreen Brickworks, Epiphany and St. Mark Church, and the historic Howard Park Methodist Church. Next slide, please. Since 1986, the Toronto Heritage Grant Program has provided matching grant funds for eligible heritage conservation work to owners of properties that are designated under Part 4 and Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The Heritage Grant Program annually assists property owners to repair and retain defining heritage attributes, including masonry, windows, doors, wood detailing, and slate roofs. Applicants may receive a grant once every 5 years for up to 50% of the cost of eligible conservation work. Owners of house form buildings may receive up to $10,000, or if replacing an entire cedar or slate roof assembly, up to $20,000 every 10 years. Owners of non-house form buildings and any tax-exempt properties may be eligible for a grant equivalent to 50% of the cost of eligible conservation work, with no maximum limit. City staff reviewed the 2024 applications for completeness and eligibility. The eligible applications were forwarded to the Toronto Heritage Grant Selection Committee for evaluation, and the committee convened for a day-long in-person meeting with city staff on May 3rd, 2024. This report recommends the approval of 10 grants totaling $317,000 under the Toronto Heritage Grant Program. Next slide, please. Among the recommended recipients is 407 Carleton Street, a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Cabbagetown North Heritage Conservation District. The proposed project is for brick repair and repointing on the front elevation using the historically appropriate tuck pointing method. The grant amount recommended for this property is $8,000. Next slide, please. In the Garden District HCD, there is a proposed masonry restoration to the brick facade, including repointing and brick replacement on the front elevation at 69 Pembroke Street. The scope of work also includes replacing and repairing the stone lintels and chimney. The grant amount recommended for this property is $10,000. Next slide, please. Further masonry restoration work is being proposed at the Part 4 designated property at 16 Kimberley Avenue, including replacing damaged bricks and localized repointing. The grant amount recommended for this property is $10,000. Next slide, please. One Heritage Place is a Part 4 property where the work proposed includes repairs to the chimney and parapet wall, including replacing damaged bricks, as well as tuck point joints using lime-based mortar. The grant amount recommended for this property is $6,500. Next slide, please. 288 Annette Street is a Part 4 designated property proposing the restoration of the chimney, including new flashing and masonry restoration at the decorative crown. New flashing and shingles are also proposed on the roof. The grant amount recommended for this property is $7,500. Next slide, please. 231 Seaton Street is a Part 4 designated property proposing restoration and repair of the slate roof. The grant amount recommended for this property is $20,000. Next slide, please. 572 to 574 Spadina is another Part 4 property that is proposing slate roof restoration. In this case, the original slate roof was covered over with an asphalt roof. The roof is proposed to be rebuilt as a slate roof, and the grant amount recommended for this property is $20,000. Next slide, please. Moving on to the non-house form category of properties, 384 Sunnyside Avenue is a Part 4 designated property. The complex was completed in 1915 and is a significant example of neo-Gothic design distinguished by its stonework. The work proposed includes the localized cleaning of carbon staining on the masonry facade and repairs to the wooden frames of the stained glass windows. The grant amount recommended for this property is $20,000. Next slide, please. 201 Cowan Avenue, also known as Epiphany in St. Mark, is a Part 4 designated church in the Parkdale neighborhood. The church was constructed in 1881 in the Gothic style of small parish churches of the mid-19th century in England. It is part of a locally important group of buildings that formed a center for the village of Parkdale. The scope of work includes the reinstatement of the original belfry, including a working bell, ornamental cross, and support structure. The grant amount recommended for this property is $105,000. Next slide, please. Finally, at 550 Bayview Avenue, better known as Don Valley Brickworks, the Part 4 property is one of the oldest brickworks in the province and was the longest operating facility in Toronto and Ontario. The property contains an important collection of industrial buildings that currently act as a significant public space in the Don Valley. The scope of work involves proposed masonry work to the office building on the northwest portion of the site, where damaged bricks are to be replaced and repointed with historically accurate limestone mortar. The grant amount recommended for this property is $110,000. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Will. Do we have any questions of staff? Adam.
Is any more information available about the 574 Spadina file? It's my understanding that property has been subject to numerous property standards orders over the past few years pertaining to the roof structure, and that the front that we see there with the shingles, the green shingles, is that included within the slate roof restoration? Because that, from my understanding, had fish scale shingles originally. There are holes large enough to throw a basketball through or a raccoon could live in at this point on that structure.
I will let my colleague Amir speak to this.
Thank you.
Hi, through you, Madam Chair. There is more information. The applicant did submit information with regards to slate roof restoration. I guess my question is, what information are you looking for specifically?
I would like to know if this is part of a broader restoration strategy for this property. It's a designated property. Other elements have been lost over time. There were 2 oriel bay windows on the front elevation that you can see the remnants of, and whether it's part of the broader restoration strategy for this property. If so, what information is available?
So I've been working on this property previously, and the homeowner is doing a lot of restoration work on the property. However, the grant program is solely for the slate roof restoration, so I can't speak to the other alterations on the property. So for the slate roof restoration, that is included in the grant program, but the other restoration work that they're doing is not.
Okay. I'm just curious how we can have it. Like I said, there's holes in that front gable elevation part of the roof structure. And if you're putting slate roof on top, that would need to be reinforced just with the weight of it. But I'll reach out to staff regarding the other elements of this file. I've been following this file with interest for 7 or 8 years now.
Thank you, Adam. Are there other questions of staff? Seeing none, is there discussion amongst ourselves? Hi, Jen.
Actually, I did kind of have a question, just in terms of, you mentioned the cost of the grants was over $300,000. How does that compare with the budget? Is there more room for more projects later in the year, or where do we stand in terms of the cost of these projects?
Through the chair, that exactly matches the budget.
So we're fully spent now, or fully allocated, as it were.
Correct.
Okay. Well, 2014.
Just before we move back to this, any other quick questions of staff? Points of clarification? None? Okay.
Well, so related to that, were there other projects that were not able to be funded because of the budget? Is there a waiting list, as it were, or are we matching the funds available with the demand?
Through the chair, we reviewed all the applications that we received and filtered out ones that were ineligible in terms of how they match our terms of reference. And then alongside our review committee, we reviewed this alongside the budget to ensure that the funds were equally distributed as we saw fit.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to let Will go now. Is there discussion amongst ourselves? I would just sort of say, this is a really lovely program. It's too bad we can't do more for heritage in the city and incentivize, good works and protection. And so thank you to staff and the volunteers on the panel that looked at the grants. This is a good news story. So this is great. We have a motion we need to receive this item. Would anybody like to do so? Mitchell, all those in favor, please. The motion.
Madam Chair, we need a motion to adopt that item.
Thank you. We need a motion to adopt the item.
Not just receive. Yeah.
Not just receive. I misspoke. Mitchell, to adopt the item. All those in favor, please. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Moving on to our new business item of 19.9, 239, 241 to 243, and 247 to 255 Dundas Street East, alterations to heritage properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And we have Neil with a staff presentation. Welcome, Neil, over to you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm Neil McKay, Heritage Planner, and I'm presenting on agenda item PB 19.9. Staff recommends that City Council approve the alterations proposed for the designated heritage properties at 239 Dundas Street East, 241, 243 Dundas Street East, and 247, 255 Dundas Street East under Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act in connection with the development application on the subject property. Next slide, please. The subject properties are located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Dundas Street East and Pembroke Street within the Garden District Heritage Conservation District in the Downtown East neighborhood. Next slide. The development site contains the following 3 heritage buildings on 4 separate property parcels. 239 Dundas Street East is a 3.5-story Second Empire brick building with a mansard roof that dates to the 1870s and forms the end of a row of 3 buildings dating from the 1870s to the 1890s. 241, 243 Dundas Street East is a 3-story vernacular brick building that dates to 1926. And 247, 255 Dundas Street East is a 3-story semi-detached Second Empire brick building with a mansard roof that dates to 1872, with later additions dating to 1920. The 3 heritage properties noted above are designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Garden District Heritage Conservation District and are identified as contributing properties within the district plan. Next slide, please. Here is a view of the east elevation of 247, 255 Dundas Street East, looking west, showing the adjoining parking lot to the rear, as well as the later additions on the building. Next slide. So, as stated before, the subject site is located within the Dundas Street East within the Garden District HCD, and it is located within the Dundas Street East character sub-area, which runs through the heart of the district. Character sub-areas recognize that different forms of development may be appropriate throughout the district, and character sub-area specific policies and guidelines intend to manage and inform alterations and new development in a way that respects and conserves the district cultural heritage value. According to the district plan, it is expected that Dundas Street East will continue to evolve and grow while conserving the cultural heritage value and heritage attributes of the character sub-area. Section 6 of the plan contains policies and guidelines for contributing properties that have guided the review of the subject proposal. Next slide, please. So the development application proposes a 52-story mixed-use tower plus a mechanical penthouse with commercial uses at grade, amenities and rental replacement units on the 2nd and 3rd levels, with residential above. The proposed development incorporates retained portions of the heritage buildings as part of the base building fronting along Dundas Street East. The district plan states that new development taller than the flat roof contributing properties should provide a minimum step back of 5 meters for all street walls fronting onto a public right-of-way to maintain the legibility and prominence of the low-scale street wall. Above the retained heritage facades at 241, 243 Dundas Street East and 247, 255 Dundas Street East, the tower has varied step backs that, according to the HIA, range from 3.88 meters to 4.95 meters at the narrowest points to the 3-story glazed reveal. So the proposed sawtooth design of the new tower means that stepbacks of greater than 5 meters is achieved over most of the retained heritage buildings, and there's also no tower above the westernmost retained heritage facade at 239 Dundas Street East. The reveal above the easternmost retained heritage facade helps to visually separate the street wall from the massing of the tower above. Above the 3-story reveal, the tower projects out towards the property line by about 2 meters. Like the floors below, the cantilever varies because of the sawtooth form of the tower. The district plan does allow for cantilevers into the tower step back. Within the Dundas Street East character sub-area, projecting balconies or cantilevered portions of additions to contributing properties may be permitted where they do not negatively impact the cultural heritage value of the character sub-area and its overall streetscape, and does not detract from the visual prominence and legibility of the contributing properties. Staff are of the opinion that the depth of the stepbacks and the height of the reveal are sufficient to conserve the scale, form, and massing of the heritage facades when viewed from the public realm. And in addition, the materiality and articulation of the tower above the street wall have been simplified through the application review process and are compatible with, visually subordinate to, and distinguishable from the on-site and adjacent heritage properties through an increase in the tower step back, a reduction in the visual impact of the cantilever, and a removal of several support columns above the heritage building on the corner at 247, 255 Dundas Street East. And as well, the existing surface parking lot to the south of the corner heritage building at 247, 255 Dundas Street East along Pembroke Street will be replaced with a new street wall that contains the main lobby entrance and access to the loading bay and visitor parking. The height of this new portion along Pembroke Street was reduced to make it more compatible with the materiality, height, and width of the corner heritage building. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the proposal involves facade retention for the three buildings, the three heritage buildings within the site, as well as this new base building reduced through the application review process to achieve a compatible relationship. So as mentioned, the retained heritage facades are proposed to be fully restored. The details of the restorations will be set out in a conservation plan to be completed to the satisfaction of the senior manager, heritage planning. So the proposed alterations to the heritage properties are consistent with the district plan's policies and guidelines on alterations, which require developments to be compatible with the cultural heritage value of the district, to include compatible materials, to conserve the district's heritage attributes, and to not diminish or detract from the integrity of the district. And as you can see here, the primary north elevation of 239 Dundas Street East, the yellow building, will be retained in situ, including all portions of the mansard roof visible from Dundas Street East. As the property is located within a continuous row, no side elevations are visible. And I should also note that plans and drawings showing the proposed glazed windscreens, would negatively impact the heritage building scale, form, and massing. And the details of these windscreens will be set out in the conservation plan. Next slide, please. Here are views of the primary north elevations of 241, 243 Dundas Street East, as well as 239 Dundas Street East. As shown on the right, the conservation strategy has been revised to retain approximately 5 meters of the west return wall of 241, 243 Dundas Street East in situ. So the panelization of the primary and east return wall is proposed, and it amounts to the removal of significant portions of the heritage building, but it is considered acceptable in this instance to allow for complex construction activities along Dundas Street East, which includes the relocation of the adjacent building at 247, 255 Dundas Street East, retaining the entire visible return wall of the commercial building at 241, 243 Dundas Street East will allow for a portion of the building to be conserved in its original location during construction. A historically appropriate storefront and parapet will be provided for the building based on historic documentation and physical evidence, as well as compatibility with the heritage character of the properties if sufficient evidence is not found. Additionally, the concealed pilasters are proposed to be reconstructed as well. Next slide, please. So given the irregular orientation and setback of the semi-detached brick building at 247, 255 Dundas Street East, the applicant is proposing to relocate the existing heritage building on the development site approximately 4 meters to the north and 1.5 meters to the east, closer to the intersection of Dundas Street East and Pembroke Street. The entire original north elevation approximately 9.58 meters of the east elevation, and the original side elevation, and approximately 4 meters of the west return wall of the heritage building will be retained and moved. The floors and roof of the structure are proposed to be removed during this relocation. District plan policy states that the relocation of a building or structure within a contributing property, intact and accepting its subsurface foundations, may be permitted if the relocation is a modest adjustment from its existing location and conserves the relationship of the structure's built form to the public realm. The proposed retention of the front and east facades and front east and west walls will maintain the appearance of a three-dimensional building, and the relocation, as stated again, is a modest adjustment from the building's existing location, satisfying the intent of this policy. The applicant has confirmed that the proposed strategy will involve moving the walls as one structure, conserving the portions of the heritage building that contain cultural heritage value and its attributes, and will not result in panelization or demolition. And that's also been confirmed with a structural preservation approach letter prepared by Jablonski, Aston Partners, which describes the feasibility of this proposed system to relocate the heritage building. The metal cresting and slate shingles will be restored, and the front yard setback will be impacted. However, this setback is currently infilled with a non-original front addition, and the general orientation of the building and its relationship to the intersection will be maintained. So the non-original additions will be removed, and the facade will be restored to its original appearance and configuration based on historic documentation, and residential units are proposed for the ground floor here. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. We have a speaker registered on this item, Nicholas Barrett.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm simply here to say thank you. It will not take me 5 minutes. Just wanted to relay my appreciation. Thank you again, Neil, for working with us on this, and to the Preservation Board for reviewing. I'll leave it at that.
Very much. Do we have any questions for Nicholas? Paul.
Thank you. My question is just at the moment we have a streetscape with several entrances, a variety of structures. It's an interesting kind of block. Is the intention that the entrances will continue to be working entrances, or will this become a facade with one entrance, and the various properties along there will kind of be amalgamated into one structure?
That's a great question. Important. We will lose one of the entrances, and that's at the structure at the very end of the site, at 193. So that building, which has a entrance that's on the half-story level, which is not accessible from grade, will no longer function. So yes, we're losing that one. However, the same amount of entrances will exist. There's a new entrance being placed, and the entrance along 241 as well as 247 will be maintained. So thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Adam.
Nicholas, I've been following this file for several years, and I've sent probably countless rounds of feedback into city planning. I don't know how much made it to your firm. I'm concerned around the loss of that entrance on the westmost building. Creating a dead zone on that staircase is going to prove nothing but challenges to building management in the future. I'm also concerned around that is a heritage designated building, and in the earlier plans, my understanding is that those windows were going to open up into the garbage room, and that you'd have the garbage trucks inside the shell of that heritage building. Is that still the case?
We tried everything we could to mitigate that. There is requirements for type G loading here. So this is a situation in which we probably don't want to see, but I think that your position, Adam, is valid. And I do think the implications of having a dead entrance there might be mitigated in other ways. However, I think that's duly noted.
I've been noting it for 3 years now. It's still, yes, I do have a question as well regarding materiality of the corner building. So in the renderings, the corner building 247, 255 switch back and forth between stucco and brick construction. It's my understanding you're now pursuing, is it a reconstruction of part of the building?
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to the materiality of the exterior walls, what we can expect moving forward?
Well, currently the building has been stuccoed over, okay, and we've done exploratory openings, and the condition of the brick has been compromised. So the material to be replaced with is not stucco. We will be replacing it with the brick masonry.
Thank you. And will it be done in the manner that's historically accurate? Have we done any investigations as to what's underneath the stucco? Is it dichromatic brickwork? Is it white brick? What type of brick is on that building? It's from the period when we do have quite ornate masonry elements in many buildings of that style in Toronto.
Absolutely, and our explorations will be further. We've only done small openings at this moment, but based on your position and based on the front elevation, which does have some detailed brickwork, I think that's worthy of noting, and that would be picked up in a conservation plan.
Thank you. And I do have one more question, Madam Chair, I hope to ask the applicant. Materiality of the mansard roofs on 235, 247, 255. Are you going to be reinstating a slate roof? There is historical evidence for slate roofs on these properties. Similarly, the decorative ornate ironworking around the roof remains in situ on the 247 half. Is there any plans to reinstate that as part of the conservation strategy?
That's been picked up. The iron cresting that wraps around the mansard roof has been something that we plan to restore. As to the slate, at the moment in time, I believe that we are endeavoring to try to replace or restore the existing slate that is there, but this is subject to further investigation.
Thank you. And my apologies, I omitted something there. One other very brief question, the heritage storefront on the middle building.
Mm-hmm.
In the renderings, it's just depicted as a modern contemporary glass storefront. Could you speak to any historic storefront designs that may be present with this site or what you may be planning? I was alarmed to see that it's just a glass wall in the renderings.
Yeah, Neil picked that up. I think that what is important is that currently there's overclad on this storefront. So further investigations to see what is underlying this. Perhaps there's we've run into very interesting moments where existing shop fronts have been simply overclad. So we're going to do further investigations, and if there is no existing material that can be restored, then this is an opportunity to use archival-based images in order to restore that shop front.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions for Nicholas? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time today. Do we have questions of Neil? Adam.
Neil, is there plans for an interpretation strategy for this site for any on-site commemoration? And if I may make a recommendation for a potential topic, the architect Ephraim Parsons, who designed the 235 building. This is a very interesting story that I'll share in a discussion among ourselves.
Through the chair, yes, there is a heritage interpretation plan as part of our recommendations, and so I will note that. Thank you, Adam.
Do you have other questions of staff? All right, thank you very much, Neil. Do we have discussion amongst ourselves? Adam.
The end building, the second Empire one with the bow windows, that architect Ephraim Parsons, that is the only building in Toronto by that architect. He was a young up-and-coming architect based on Church Street, and he tragically died right after designing this building and one other outside Toronto of typhoid fever at the age of 31. So I would encourage that story be explored. It's quite interesting that this is the only known building in the entire city by this architect.
So that'd be interesting to include. Thank you, Adam. Other discussion? amongst ourselves? Seeing none, we're going to move to a vote. But before we do, I'm going to have staff are going to put the recommendations on the screen because this was a new business item that was added this week. I thought, you know, and Neil, thank you. You've given us a really thorough presentation, but because we vote upon the recommendations in the report, I thought it'd be good if we all saw those.
Madam Chair, if I may make one more comment. This restoration is something I'm very much looking forward to.
Thank you.
The historical photos of that block, what has been lost on that section of Dundas Street East would make people weep in terms of architectural history.
Just scrolling through the recommendations. This is also on the website where our agenda is kept if you wanted to sort of look at it yourselves. I'm just going to give everybody about 30 seconds to digest. Okay, thank you very much. We have a staff report with recommendations before us. Do I have a motion to adopt? From Matthew. All those in favor, please. And the motion carries. Thank you very much. We're moving now to PB 19.3. There's a staff report before us that we can hear, remembering that this has a confidential portion. So we're going to do all of the public stuff first, and if we need to move in camera, then we shall. And we also have a speaker registered on this item that will occur at this point. So I will turn it over to Dan.
Thank you. Testing, could you hear me? Okay, good. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Dan DeBartolo of Heritage Planning. I will first provide a public presentation, followed by a confidential presentation. This report.
Sorry, Dan. I'm just waiting for share permissions again. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, I'll just wait. I'll just hold on. This report recommends that City Council approve the alterations and the demolition of heritage attributes at 778 King Street West under sections 33 and 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I don't know why I'm disappearing from the screen. I really am still here. These approvals are being sought in conjunction with zoning bylaw amendment application, which has been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Next slide, please. The property is located at the north side of King Street West, just west of Tecumseh Street. It is not located within a heritage conservation district, nor are there any heritage adjacent properties. Next slide, please. The property comprises a two-story brick building with stone trim and was constructed in 1947. It is a representative example of mid-20th century industrial headquarters, demonstrating the influence of streamlined modern style. The property reflects the development of King Street West for textile-related manufacturing during the first half of the 20th century, as well as the area's later period of adaptive reuse and cultural regeneration. In 1988, the property was converted to a gallery, and most currently, it's been a real estate office. This concludes my public presentation.
Thank you very much. We have a speaker on this item. Hello again, Emily. You have 5 minutes.
I just wanted to be here to say thank you to Dan and thank you to everyone. I won't be providing a presentation as the matter is confidential. However, I'm here in case there are any questions I can't answer at this time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of Emily that pertain to the things not confidential? Seeing none, we have confidential attachments that we need to consider, so we need to move into closed session. Members, I will move the motion to go into closed session and ask the clerk to display, and I'll read that out. So that the Toronto Preservation Board meeting in closed session to receive advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. All those in favor? Motion carries. And I'll give clerks a few moments to do what they need to do.
Yes, Madam Chair, if you could just give us a moment to get ourselves ready to go into closed session. We could ask anyone who doesn't need to be in the meeting to disconnect or move yourself into the lobby. And if you could advise who staff-wise should remain at this time?
From staff, it should be Dan and I. Can you keep Emma here too, because she's doing the presentation? I think that's all staff. Emily Collins is still here, so she's not. She's not. She's from the applicant's team.
Okay, thank you.
All right, should I leave? I'm available to sit in the confidential session if that exit if that's not allowed.
No, you don't stay for the confidential
Yes,
session.
Emily, if you could just move
Okay.
yourself into the lobby, that'd be great. Thank you. Ready to resume an open session.
Perfect. Do we have any discussion amongst ourselves? Seeing none, we have a staff report with recommendations before us. Would anybody care to move? Adam, are you moving it?
No.
No, okay. I'll move it then. All those in favor, please. Adam, I apologize. You're very backlit, so I just can't see your hand. Okay, perfect. Motion carries. Thank you very much. That concludes our business. I would like to say, you probably noticed that we've had a new team of clerks at our helm today. Welcome, Justin and Tanya. Thank you very much for everything. And I'd like to take this moment to say thank you to Fortis Chu and Matthew Green, who have been at the helm till now. You are an incredible pair to work with, and we will miss you, but we look forward to an amazing team. So thank you very, very much, everybody, and have a wonderful day.